Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I just arrived. I was a speaker at another conference. I will introduce Andrés Caggiano. He is an agronomist. He has been working in product development at NK for 10 years. He is currently the product development manager, and his topic is digital agriculture, how to create profitability in challenging contexts. You have a QR code for asking questions. We will have the questions live here in the room with a microphone. Thank you. Thank you for this introduction. I'm pleased to be here. It's the second year I participate in Aapresid. It's a great place to share with you what we are doing at NK. And here I would like to talk about digital tools and how to create profitability in challenging contexts. It is important to take correct decisions based on data. I like soccer, and I am a sports fan, so I have been thinking about an analogy with a penalty kick end of match. For instance, if we have to make a penalty shoot, what is a success rate that a soccer player can have when shooting a penalty shoot? Let's suppose we have this goal and we can divide it into 6 quadrants. So we can either aim the shoot to the upper portion, to the right or to the left, and we will have a 60 or 70% success ratio. If we aim the shoot to the lower portion of the goal, either left or right, we have the same success ratio. But if you aim the kick at the middle, you have 80 to 85% success ratio. Okay, you will bear with me and you will see that this has to do with the topic of my presentation. Why am I mentioning this? I wanted to share some data with you. Players around the world kick most penalty shoots in the upper portion of the goal or in the lower portions of the goal. How many aim the shoot to the middle? Only between 10 and 20% of soccer players. You have heard perhaps some sayings that players close their eyes, shut their eyes, and hope for the best when they kick. I believe they know about these statistics or about these ratios, but they want to play it safer. So they are making decisions based on data. I wanted to show this by way of example. If you make decisions, data-driven decisions in sport, you can also make data-driven decisions in agriculture. Now, farmers may be thinking, what is the best date for sowing to optimize the yield of the season, or what kind of hybrid products they should plant, or what is the optimum density, or what level of variability there is in the lot, and what are the advantages of variable density, and finally, what is the target yield of the season. So we like data. At NK, we make data-driven decisions. This is a snapshot of the maize map, and we have hybrid strains, but we take into account many variables. From the agronomical perspective, the health perspective, the cycles, and the phenology. This information is fed into a database. The data feeds our digital tools, and I'm going to share with you which ones we use. So the ultimate goal is to make decisions based on data. What do we do with the data? We create prediction models. This is a mathematical or statistical tool that tries to describe the behavior of a variable through known data. We use prediction models for weather, for instance. We all have tools in our phones that will give us weather forecasts. Netflix has an algorithm. It has a way of determining based on our tastes. It has a way of determining what series or movies to show us whenever we log in. And then we also have predictive models that are fed with data for GPS systems, for maps. So the question is, can we make data-driven decisions in agriculture? The answer is yes. And let me share with you the digital tools that we have and how we can use them to our advantage. There is one tool that allows us to know the optimum sowing date. This prediction model has certain inputs. You can load the site or location, the crop and cycle, the type of soil, whether it is clayey soil or sandy soil or loam soil. So these are variables that will have an impact on the product. Also, the humidity, 75%, for instance. If I modify the variables, I will get different optimal dates for sowing. So these are the inputs for a year where we could have Niño weather. And probably the best date will be between late September and early November. So here you will see a curve. If you sow after January, you will have significantly different results. This is what the model is telling me. If you plant at the end of September, you will get the higher yield. Of course, there is an error margin. If you delay planting to December, you can get 1.1 tons per hectare per week. If you plan for a different climate year, for instance, a year with the Niña event, we want to expose a critical period to the best conditions. February has better rainfall conditions and better sunshine, but what the model is telling me is if this is a year with a Niña event, for this specific location, you should avoid a critical period. So it is a good tool that allows us to make decisions more accurately. We could also talk about the potential yield. A producer is planning for a lot of 10 tons per hectare. That is the expected yield. How about the absence of data? You may be working with suboptimal density, and you may lose up to 113 kilograms per hectare. You can see this in the curve. This is the loss, 113 kilograms per hectare, if the target density is not achieved. And here, the producer is short of the target density by 6,300 plants per hectare. How about an overestimate? In this scenario, I would be using 12,000 plants in excess, and the expected yield would be 49 kilos per hectare in excess. So we need to take into account different variables, and density for maize is very important. It's a variable for management. This means that below or above the optimum level, we have economic density. Let's suppose that a producer decides to plant 75,000 plants per hectare, regardless of the environment. In this case, the producer would have a density of 21,000 plants in excess of what the model requires. There would be an empty circle of economic density. The cost would be $47 in excess per hectare. Now, in the environment for 10 tons or 12 tons, we would be closer to the model, but this is not specific enough. It would be like handling it blindly. So it is very important to choose the right density. We have another scenario where the producer is using 55,000 plants per hectare. For the lower environment or scenario, they are close enough. But for different scenarios, without knowing the response they will get from the hybrid product, the cost in excess will be $38 per hectare. Should one adjust density in a variable way? We have been working with different apps for the application of inputs. For the past 3 years, we planted 40 lots, and the differential in the yield is 3.4%. The variable lots compared to the fixed lots, we get a yield difference of 4.5% with a success rate of 75% and a profitability of additional $52 per hectare. So we have the possibility of using variables or variable adjustment of density. We have tools with satellite imaging and yield maps, altitude, and tracking. This allows us to have more accurate information and to make decisions in terms of density and fertilization. In conclusion, we have two tools to help producers make decisions. One is the N-case system, which is part of our digital solutions. It is able to recommend, based on the inputs we were talking about, recommending the optimum sowing date for each environment. This is the same chart. Here you will see the yields that were achieved. The green line shows the probability of a frosty event. The model has an error margin. It has more than 30 years of climate data loaded. And for September the 1st, this would be the date with the best yield possible. The climate year that was selected was El Niño year. As I go forward, And if I delay the date of planting, the yield may be lower. Additionally, I can look at the resources of the lot or the productive capacity. This database has soil information, maize growth coefficients, and when I load the information, the system will retrieve results. For instance, it will tell me that the yield would be 9,600 kilograms per hectare.
For this, we use the percentage of all hybrids. You may say, as a producer, I know that we get 7,000 or 8,000 kilos of maize, but this tool can give you the chance of knowing how much you should have through mathematical models. They have a lot of information, as I said before, to do with weather, meteorological stations, types of soil, the growth ratio of hybrids, etc. This will also give you the chance to choose the hybrids of the NK portfolio, compare them to the competition, to see the density of the optimum sowing, the requirement for nitrogen, and the crop phenology. It'll give us an idea, according to the time that we've set for planting, when are the most important times for the maize, such as flowering, and when you should use the selected problem with the data from the phenology of our crops. And this will give you an idea of the life of that hybrid. We have fixed, variable, and nitrogen dose. We've spoken about 9,400 kilos, and you will have an optimum density in economical and biological terms. Here it's 6.6 plants, and it'll say how much nitrogen I need to get that yield. Per fertilizer, with taking into account the initial nitrogen, and with those details, we have models of nitrogen absorption that will allow us to get to see how NK hybrids need with regards to how much absorbed nitrogen. And the other tool that is also very valuable is the one that's called CropWise. It is a digital tool that allows you to use satellite images to make forecasts with other inputs as well, such as if you have a yield map, for example, and you're working on this, you can load altitude metrics and all kinds of things to see what variety you have within a plot. Manual ambientation, because we can see what the rotation is and see what the critical period is of each of the crops. I can choose an image per campaign, and the system will give me the ambience of that particular plot. It'll be more and more precise according to how much input I give it. I can do this automatically as well. That takes the last few years. Of the last 10 years, it'll give me the idea, and it can be checked by a technician, an expert. You should always use this to see how that actually works with what we're working with. This tool will give me a final prescription, which will be density in each of those environments, and the use of fertilizers specific according to the area, to see how many kilos of fertilizer I should use to make the most of that environment, and also through a scouting tool to monitor the plot, to have it on the cell phone, to be able to load that, to see the incidence of weeds, to take pictures due to some particular pest, and also load it with a potent tool for scouting that allows me to see what the forecast is for that. And this tool is called Protector. These tools in NK are for the distributors and for the technicians, and they can be used because you are users of the brand. They have no cost for a producer or an advisor. You can ask for these digital tools through. We will give you a product and the possibility for you to handle it in the best way for you. And also, you can generate this ambient definition with the prescription of other products that we know. We know the curve of density and the amount of nitrogen needed to maximize yields. How are we doing? Just in case. I'm almost finished. Finally, for us, as final conclusions, the specific knowledge of hybrids, the interaction with the environment, and the handling practices are the key for success. The planting date, the definition of a reachable yield and density must be based on data and agronomical models. There are methods that are less precise. With all the information that we have nowadays, this is decisions that we can make based on data. We should leverage data. And then it may vary, but having all of this information is great for decision making. The management of variable density, which allows to improve profitability where there is a gap between yield within the environment, because if the plot has no variability, it probably isn't the best solution, especially for maize. Besides from having products, we have digital models and digital tools and models that can help us. And finally, I think making decisions with data and models in agriculture is similar to a poker game where you've almost lost because you may get the best possible cards, but it depends on how we use them. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Good afternoon. Two questions. First, the settings to see variable agriculture is having an effect is something that you do with the same density. And when it comes to NK hybrids, do you have information where you think it is worth adjusting if you got so many plants? Yes. The first question, yes. All of the trials of these variability tools, we do it on a fixed plot of land. We have plots of 20 to 25 hectares to repeat in variable and fixed stripes and see how they did. And sometimes we also find mistakes in the environment because you don't know the crop or you have chosen the images badly. But yeah, we compare fixed with variable. And the second question, as I've said, maize has an optimum response, but the jump in density from 2,000 to 3,000 plants give you no benefit because you can use different densities for different varieties. You generally have to speak about considerable jumps to see differences in yield or in performance. But if you don't see it there, you'll see it in economic terms from 5,000 or 6,000 seeds in a proportion of the plot, and they probably won't give you the right yield. you have to see it from a saving point of view, but they won't give you a certain number. Because when you do the response to density, we do it with jumps of 20,000 plants. We begin with 20,000 plants and end up with 120,000, and we do it so we can get a lot of points when we do the curve. But as I said, modern hybrids, it's not, they're bigger jumps, over 5,000 plants, actually. But what you don't have in yield, you will save in seeds. Any other questions? First question, the quadratic function are available per hybrid? And the second question is whether you're comparing optimum against optimum, when you talk about fixed and variable. We have the curves, and they come to you as a user with this tool. When you put all of the elements inside and you have a yield of 8,000, it'll give you the optimum density, both in economical terms, the price of maize, price of the seed, and the commodity, and there's other factors that we can't handle, which have to do with each company, such as freight. But with the price of the commodity and of the actual bag, it'll give you that, which is always lower than the optimum. So that's how it gives it to you. It's not that you're going to get the curves. You can even simulate all of the different ambiances and see how the hybrid works. And for each hybrid, we'll say this is more or less plastic. It responds to the density more or less. I forgot the other question. Sorry, I can't hear it without the mic. We compare. The producer will say, this 25-hectare plot gives us this yield. We check that against what we get. If it was treated this way, it would be 9,000 kilos. That's so many plants, and then we compare. I don't know whether I'm clear.
No, que por ahí me pareció un poco alto los.
I thought it was a bit high for $57, but I wanted to know whether the comparison was optimum. It's optimum against optimum. Sometimes you lose a variable because you don't have enough variability, or this is biology, as I said before. But in the middle, it's giving us that $57 in favor of the variable. It is details. Those are the data that we have. When you did that prescription, you were speaking about 2.2 grams per plant, where you got the 147 with 66,000. That is a feature for your hybrids, or have you calculated it? And the question is, you mean 9 grams of nitrogen per plant, right? Yes. And the second, how much do you go up or down according to the ambience? It's not fixed, what you up or reduce. You mean in seeds? No, I mean grams per plant. We have done this project in over 3 years, where you see the nitrogen absorption and the conversion from the nitrogen to grain. Every 22 kilograms of nitrogen, 1 ton of grain. We are doing that for all of the NK hybrids. It's a bit more efficient. We contrasted it with some papers. We compared it. With less nitrogen, you can actually have more grain. The hydrogen is absorbed. We're talking about what's absorbed, not what's in the system. We don't take into account losses. What you see here varies. In the intermediate ambiances, it may be where you get more of a difference with those 22 kilograms of absorbed nitrogen. No, you don't understand. You talk to the producer and say, I have 70,000 plants, and you have to tell me you need so many grams of soil plus fertilizer. Then whatever I do is up to me, but you're going to have to tell my hybrid's 2.6, and if you want to risk, put a bit more, and if you want to save, put a bit less, right? Yes, that's the way it works. But the question is the 2.6, what you put there. It's an example for that particular hybrid, for that setting. It will vary according to the material and to the productive situation. But also the tool has the chance that if you have a particular data to do with the nitrogen, that can be discounted from the absorbed nitrogen that you need to add, and also the efficiency of the fertilizer according to the source. So this is difficult to measure. It depends on the producer. Thank you. Any other question? Have you analyzed where you should do a variable with phosphorus? No, not so far. We're doing nitrogen, not phosphorus. Any other questions? I wanted to know what other application may this new tool do, to do with dusting perhaps or something? The tool that you can get has three pillars. One is planting, which is this with satellite images to make decisions on a plot. Then there is a scouting tool to take the field data and to do geolocation to make decisions. And the third one is called imagery. I didn't mention it, which is through satellite images that are loaded every 3 to 5 days on the app. You can see the health of the plot. You can see how the NBDI of the plot works. If you see that, you may make decisions accordingly, but the tool that I'm mentioning does not have what you mentioned, which is for applications of fertilizer or dusting. Like any, the tool from Syngenta has more branches and more features there. Any other questions? This digital platform that you mentioned, at some point you said that harvesting maps could be there for forecasting. Those type of files, what kind of file can you do? Many files, but with a GIF file, you can actually load it, you can drag it, put it on the yield, and it offers another one, the GIF file.
Así sumas cualquier capa que vos quieras.
So then you can add as many layers as you want. When it comes to variable seed for sunflowers, have you studied that? Have you reached a conclusion whether it's good or not? It's more complex in sunflower. They have more capability for compensation than maize. We've been studying it, and nowadays the greatest benefit comes from the economic area, not from yield, by saving seeds and the ambience that you may achieve. But it's not the same benefit as maize. We're still studying it. We can see that maize nowadays has greater impact when it comes to yield and financial benefit.
Pero, perdón.
Excuse me. The tool also works for sunflower, of course. Any other questions? Okay, I thank everybody. Thank you very much.